7.3, we're going to go over operations with rational expressions. This first video is going to go over adding and subtracting, and then the second video is going to go over multiplying and dividing. So when we're adding and subtracting with rational expressions, so two fractions that are being added or subtracted, the denominators must be the same before adding or subtracting them together. And then when the denominator is the same, you just add or subtract the numerators, the top values, and then you keep the denominator the same. So if you look at this first example, it says perform the indicated operations and then simplify the results. The important thing is you do need to make sure you simplify your final answer. So when we're solving these, we want to get a common denominator. And the common denominator, we want it to be the lowest possible number, or what we will call it is our LCM. So if we look at our first denominator, it is 7 times x, and we will use that. And then any new factors that are in our second denominator, we will multiply it by that 7x. But because there's already an x in our LCM, we don't need to multiply anything else to get our LCM. So for this fraction, these two fractions, our LCM is 7x. Because the first fraction already has 7x as the denominator, we're not going to do anything with that one. Our second fraction doesn't, but to get 7x on the denominator, we can multiply by 7. And when you multiply by just the denominator, you also need to multiply by the numerator. So this fraction would change to 7 over 7x. Now that the denominators are the same, we can go ahead and subtract the numerators. So 11 minus 7 is going to be 4 over, and then 7x. Because 4 and 7 don't have any common factors, that means it is completely simplified. Okay, now let's look at example B. This one we are adding, so again, we need a common denominator, or our LCM, lowest common multiple of ours. So here we have a 3, and for our first fraction. Our second fraction, we have a 6x. And I know if I multiply 3 by 2, that would get me to 6. And then we also need an x. So we're also going to multiply by x, which would make our LCM 6x. So our first fraction here, we have 2 over 3. We need it to become a 6x on the bottom. So I'm going to take that 3 and multiply it by 2x. And if I multiply the bottom by 2x, I also have to multiply the top by 2x. That would give me 4x over 6x. Now, this can be simplified, but we don't want to simplify it because then we'd end up with the 2/3 again. So we're going to keep that. And then the second fraction already has 6x as a denominator, so we'll just leave that the same. Now that we have a common denominator, we will add. So we would get 4x plus 4 on the top. These are not, sorry, my dogs are playing. These are not like terms, so we cannot add those together. And then we keep the denominator of 6x. Okay. Now, if we look at this, 4, 4, and 6 are all divisible by 2. It is okay to simplify, but you have to simplify every part of the fraction, otherwise it will be wrong. So if I'm going to divide by 2 for one term, I have to divide all of the terms in the fraction by 2. And that would give me 2x plus 2 over 3x. And that would be our final answer. So don't forget to check that you are simplifying these. Okay, that brings us to example C. For this one of our fractions has a denominator of x minus 4. And we're going to treat this as one part or one factor. So we're going to put that in parentheses. So one part of our LCM is x minus 4. And then our other one is going to be x plus 3. Oops, that's not a 3. With these, you do not need to factor for the denominator. So you can leave or FOIL for the denominators. You can leave the denominators in parentheses like this. So our first fraction has x minus 4. We need to multiply it by an x minus 3 to get it to our LCM. So then that would bring us with on the top x times x minus 3 over x minus 4 times x minus 3. And again, you don't want to simplify here because we need that common denominator to add or subtract them together. Okay, so then our next fraction had an x plus 3 on the bottom, so we need to multiply those by x minus 4. There we go. So then our new fraction would be 6 times x minus 4 on the top. And then on the bottom, we have our common denominator now of x minus 4 times x plus 3. Okay, now you do not need to FOIL out the denominators. What we're going to do is we are going to distribute on the top so that we can go ahead and subtract. So for now, before I do that, I'm going to combine them. So I had x times x minus 3 and then minus 6 times x minus 4. Now the reason I combined them first is because with subtraction, a lot of times people will forget to subtract everything and then they'll get the wrong answer. So when we distribute here, we're going to distribute a negative 6. Sorry about my dogs. Okay. And then at the beginning, we're going to distribute an x. So that would give us an x squared minus 3x minus 6x and then plus 24 all over x minus 4 and x minus 3. So then we'll combine our like terms on the top. That will be an x squared minus, oh, that's not right, minus 9x plus 24. Now, with these, once it's simplified on the top, we do need to make sure that we check to see if it can be factored. So we're going to check, are there two numbers that multiply to positive 24 and then add to negative 9? So for 24, we have 1 and 24, 2 and 12, and then 3 and 8, and 4 and 6. So none of those add to get negative 9, because we would get 23, 10, 5, and then, or 11 and 10. Yep, so none of those add to negative 9 and multiply to 24. So because of that, we can't factor, and that tells us that we have our answer in simplest form. And you can leave it just like that. Okay. Now we have 3 more examples for adding and subtracting. All right, so for example D, we still need to figure out what our LCM is for our common denominator. To do that, we are going to want to factor. So far, previously, we have not been able to factor any of our denominators. And so we were able to identify our LCM pretty easy. So this one, before we find our LCM, we are going to factor. So in our first one, we need two numbers that multiply to 4 and add to 4. So that would be a 2 and 2, x plus 2 and x plus 2. And then our second one, we have a difference of squares there. So we would have x minus 2 and x plus 2 here. So then we are going to find our LCM. So our first fraction has x plus 2, two of them. So x plus 2 times x plus 2. Now we have already got the x plus 2 covered from the second one, but we'll need an x minus 2. And that will be our common denominator. So we are going to multiply so that all of our denominators become this. Our first denominator already has the first two x plus 2's. It is just missing this x minus 2. So that is what we're going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by for our first fraction. And because there's two terms there, we're going to put it in parentheses, x plus 1 times x minus 2. And then we would have x plus 2 times x plus 2 times x minus 2. And I do apologize. My dog is being crazy. Okay, so then our next one. That fraction had an x minus 2 and an x plus 2. So it is just missing another x plus 2. So we're going to multiply both the top and the bottom by that x plus 2. Okay, so then when we do that, we would have 2 times x plus 2 all over our x plus 2, and then x minus 2. Now we have that common denominator, so we can combine our two fractions. So we would have x plus 1 times x minus 2 times x plus 2 all over our common denominator. Okay, now for these, we cannot simplify until we combine all of our like terms on the top or the numerator. So we are going to have to FOIL at the beginning here. We're going to take x times x times negative 2, and then x times 1, and then 1 times negative 2. So when we factor those or FOIL that out, we would get x squared minus 2x plus a 1x and then minus 2. And then we'll distribute this negative 2, and that will give us a negative 2x minus 4. And our denominator stays the same. Okay, so then we're going to combine our like terms here. And that would give us an x squared minus 3x minus 6 all over x plus 2, and an x minus 2. Okay, now before we say we are done, we need to check, can we simplify further? So we're going to see, are there two numbers that multiply to negative 6 that add to negative 3? So the numbers that multiply to 6 would be 1 and 6, 2 and 3. And that is it. And neither of these are we able to combine them to get negative 3. So that means this is our final answer. Okay, so I would recommend trying these last two on your own before you move on to, or before you watch the rest of the video. Okay. All right, so for example E, hopefully you have your answer here. This one, I can factor the beginning denominator to x plus 3 and x minus 3 because they're a difference of squares. So for my LCM, the first fraction, again, had the x plus 3, x minus 3, so I'm going to start with that. Okay, and then the second fraction had the x minus 3 already, so I don't need to add anything else to my LCM. The first fraction doesn't need to be multiplied by anything, so I'll keep the 6x plus 1 over x plus 3 and x minus 3. And then plus, my second fraction, the denominator was missing the x plus 3, so that is what I'm going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by. That will give me 4 times x plus 3 all over our common denominator. Okay. Once we have that common denominator, then we can combine our fractions. So we'll have 6x plus 1 plus 4 times x plus 3 all over my common denominator. Okay. Now I'm going to simplify the numerator. And that will give me 6x plus 1 plus 4x plus 12 all over x plus 3 times x minus 3. Then we'll combine any like terms, so that'll give us 10x plus 13 all over our common denominator. And once you're here again, you need to check to see if you can factor the numerator. And on this one, we cannot because 10 and 13 don't have any common factors. So this is our final answer. Okay, our next one. This one has a 7 over 6x minus 12. So I'm going to start by factoring the denominator. Both of those terms have a 6 that I can factor out, and that will start me off for my LCM. So my two factors are 6 and x minus 2. And if I look at my second fraction, that one already has a 6. It's just missing the x minus 2. So that will be my common denominator. And I'll have 7 over 6 times x minus 2 plus, and my second fraction, we need to multiply it by x minus 2 to get that common denominator. And that will give us x plus 3 times x minus 2 on the top and our common denominator on the bottom. Now I can combine my two fractions because they have a common denominator. All right, and then we have to simplify the top before we can say we are done because we need to make sure there's no common factors that we can simplify on both the top and the bottom. So we're going to FOIL out these parentheses at the beginning and then combine our like terms. So that would give us x squared minus 2x plus 3x minus 6 all over 6 times the x minus 2. Then we're going to combine our like terms. So I'll start with the x squared plus an x and then plus 1, it looks like. Okay, and this will be all over 6 times x minus 2. So here I'm looking, can I factor the top? So on the top I have a 1 and then an x. So the only numbers that multiply to 1 are 1 and 1. So there's no way that we can add or subtract those to get the result of 1. So that means this is our final answer and it is completely simplified. Okay, these ones, adding and subtracting, those are the most complicated ones. Multiplying and dividing are a lot easier because you don't have to get that common denominator. So if you are struggling with these, make sure you ask questions.